Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and we all know why we're here today. Well, not all of us are here. Mr. Brian E. Roach, conspicuous by his absence. Hopefully he's in good health and didn't take the news of Aaron Rodgers and finally announcing that he's going to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers before minicamp. The Steelers actually put out a press release, so this isn't all just smoke and mirrors. It seems like this is this long-standing rumor, this link between Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers is finally going to materialize as we get into the summer workouts, football and shorts. We've got training camp dates that were just announced by the team as well. It's going to be a lot of fun in Latrobe, St. Vincent's College, when we get to the end of July, beginning of August. So it's right on the homepage of the Steelers.com. Steelers agree to terms with Aaron Rodgers. I think I saw a figure from Jerry Dulac, one of the Steelers beat writers, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and I think he threw out $20 million, but we don't have anything just official yet. So it's gonna be an interesting time with training camp, and if I guess check out the schedule there. It's on Steelers.com, but the team is set to report on July 23rd, their first practice on the 24th, and first practice in pads on July 29th with Friday Night Lights on August 1st. Kind of hard to remember that. So that one's at 7 o'clock, Latrobe Memorial Stadium. Most of the practices 1:55. Roughly 2 o'clock. This is just to keep everyone punctual, right? That includes Mr. Rodgers. We'll see how much he participates. 41 going on 42 years old. You've heard all of the shows in the past. We just had one 2 weeks ago with myself and Brian talking about how much he moves the needle. We had a show last week where as soon as we cut, as soon as we broke, as soon as we published, we were talking about, well, what positions could the Steelers add to? Could they still make some additions to this team? And one area that we talked about that we were just like, no, they don't need anybody, was tight end. And all of a sudden there's news, there's links, it's like it's cooled off, it heats back up. Jonnu Smith, the only Pro Bowl player with the Miami Dolphins last season. And let me tell you, Jonnu Smith would be a nice addition. At first it didn't make sense to me. I was like, huh? Why? Jonnu Smith, he's approaching 30. Which is okay for a tight end, right? He wants a new contract. He wants something a little longer term. He wants a little bit more money. But what have the Steelers been looking at? We were asking just a few shows ago. It's like the gift that keeps on giving as Aaron Rodgers gives us content, right? But Jonnu Smith's given us a little bit to talk about besides getting into Aaron Rodgers today. So let me talk about Smith real quick because he's played with Arthur Smith, right? No relation, obviously, but Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers, offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans, also head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Both have been stops for Smith along his career. 8 years in the league. Last year with the Miami Dolphins, his first as a Pro Bowler, targeted 111 times. So a very heavy volume in Miami's offense. He caught 88 of those passes for 884 yards. 8 touchdowns, about 10 per reception. He moved the chains 55 times. The 55 last year was almost as much as he had his entire career. Now, I know some folks are going to probably say some things like, hey, why just last year? Is it just a one-off? He's played alongside some pretty good tight ends, I believe, several years with Delaney Walker in Tennessee. Also, Kyle Pitts getting drafted to Atlanta. So he had never really been the focus point of any offense. If he comes to Pittsburgh, that's kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say that would be the same. But Pat Freiermuth is obviously the big target. He's the guy that we keep saying, maybe this could be a wide receiver too for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, Jonnu Smith could also be the same. If you start throwing out these real, like these heavy package looks with these two tight ends and a DK Metcalf, and don't forget, I'm really kind of high on Roman Wilson as a wide receiver, played for that university up north. You know, I don't say the name as an Ohio State fan, but Roman Wilson and those Wolverines, that national championship team, very run heavy, Jim Harbaugh offense. This is a physical receiver that was brought in to block, but he could also run a 4.3 40. So you throw him out there with DK Metcalf, and you got Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, you got Caleb Johnson or Jalen Warren. It's going to be hard to try and figure out what this Steelers offense is going to be doing, and this can protect somebody like an Aaron Rodgers, but do the Steelers add another wide receiver? Another hot name this week, Gabriel Davis, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars for 1 year, but you probably know him best with the Buffalo Bills. 4 seasons in Buffalo, and he was one of the more reliable targets for Josh Allen. He leaves for a decent contract in Jacksonville to kind of be the guy, but Jacksonville just added Travis Hunter. Last year, they added Brian Thomas Jr. They don't need Gabe Davis, especially they're not going to pay him the contract that he has for to be a wide receiver 3. So the money that he's got coming his way might make him a little less expensive for a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if his agent's out there asking for too much, they're going to tell him to go fly a kite, because they're not going to overpay a third wide receiver either. That's probably where he ends up landing. So his deal was 3 years, $39 million. So you're in, if I do the maths with Joe, $13 million per year. About a Deontay Johnson kind of contract from a couple years ago. We know the wide receivers, their contracts, their money, it's inflated. But for a little bit more money, do you want to throw that at a veteran? Now, Keenan Allen's the one that keeps getting thrown out there by a bunch of guys, including Flash, our own Zach Saladonia, Mark Cabali, independent now, but formerly of The Athletic, and also various Pittsburgh newspapers. He's all full in, Keenan Allen. The guy, anything you throw at him, like it sticks to his hands, right? But injuries, and now I think 32 years old for Keenan Allen. I think Amari Cooper's just crossing the 30-year-old age group here, but get back to Cooper in a second, because we're just talking about Gabe Davis. He actually had a visit with the Pittsburgh Steelers on Thursday, left without a contract. Last year, he only started 9 games, appeared in 10 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, off and on injuries and issues where he couldn't stay on the field. 20 receptions on 42 targets, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 12 yards per reception. That's all like bottom of the barrel, because in previous years, he was catching somewhere 35, 48, 45 passes. So it gives you an idea. 35 to 45 receptions, just shy of 600 yards his rookie season, 549, 836, 746. These are healthy wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type numbers with 7, 6, 7, and 7 touchdowns. Very consistent. Additional option in anyone's offense if he can remain healthy, if his price tag isn't too high. Don't forget the Steelers still have Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, a third, another fast guy, 4.2 40, or like I think a 4.2 4.25. He's pretty close with Roman Wilson there. You got 2 guys that can fly. Smaller guy, of course, but last year, 36 catches, 548 yards, 4 touchdowns in what was a bad Steelers offense, at 15.2 yards per reception, which had been Gabe Davis's calling card. He had 17-1, 15-7, 17-4, and a 16.6 yards per reception average during his 4 years with the Buffalo Bills. So it's definitely somebody that can move the chains. It's another experienced hand that the Steelers can put in the pile. But money talks. Will it be another target for Aaron Rodgers? Just how full does this receiver room need to be? They still even used Cordell Patterson a little bit there with a few passes here or there last season. He's still on the roster at the bottom, but at the very most, you have DK Metcalf. Like I said, very physical. You got somebody that's willing to block, unlike George Pickens. DK's not going to give up on plays. So if you add a Jonnu Smith, maybe you don't need another wide receiver. Maybe you could roll with Calvin Austin. Maybe you can roll with Roman Wilson. Maybe Robert Woods, who I feel is going to be primarily a special teams edition, but you've already got some other special teams editions still with Scotty Miller, Ben Skoranek. There's a few dudes that are on the practice squad that were signed out of the various rookie mini camps or as undrafted free agents following the draft. So we got a lot of eyes to keep a lot of players to keep our eyes on. So we are going to roll over here now to the guy that might be throwing everybody this ball. Aaron Rodgers. Oh boy, where do we even start with Mr. Rodgers? Well, I know Brian's not a fan of him. I've respected Aaron Rodgers for what he's done over the years. But man, do I feel like this is, somebody said there was a meme floating around. I'm going to say it a lot nicer than what the meme said, but it's like, hey, this is like the Steelers finally hooking up with that high school crush that you had, all these years later when, maybe a little bit of the shine is worn off. And maybe Rodgers still has something to prove, but I come into this with the same skepticism that I did for Russell Wilson just 1 year ago. Now with Russell Wilson, it was, man, this dude had a lot of different offensive coordinators, and unless they're games where they're playing and trailing from behind, he hasn't been thrown for a lot of yards, has been thrown for a lot of touchdowns. It's exactly what this looks like in New York for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, it's tough because Aaron Rodgers, does he still have the quick release? Can he escape pressure? I want to say that the Jets had a better offensive line than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know nobody wants to think that anybody has anything better than what, Pittsburgh has. But let's face it, when you have somebody like Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard and Garrett Wilson, that's a better wide receiver group than even what they've got right now. And these are Rodgers' buddies. Two of the three played with in Green Bay. Breece Hall is a running back. They had some pretty good dudes along the offensive line. Coaching is a nightmare. And so Rodgers is coming into this again. Different coaches. He's a year removed from, I believe, what was that, the Achilles tear? 4 snaps that he played in his debut with the Jets, and he lost his whole season. He was rehabbing and trying to come back. And I think he really did want to prove something, but all they proved last season was that the Jets is still a dumpster fire. They're a poverty franchise. They won 5 games, 5-12, despite Rodgers' best efforts, which were in basically 3 games. He had 3 games with 3 or more touchdown passes, 2 with 3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars and Houston Texans. It should be no surprise these were all victories for the Jets also. And they're scattered about the year. A little later, like one on Halloween, mid-December against Jacksonville, and then the 4 touchdown performance against the Miami Dolphins at the end of the season on January 5th, actually of this year, the way the seasons overlap. But Rodgers really isn't throwing for 300 or more yards these days, despite 584 pass attempts, which is still up there with what he's been doing over his career. Did he do more last year than Steelers quarterbacks have been doing over the last several years? Absolutely. He's still completing 63% of his passes through 584 times. I'm not sure he's going to do that in Arthur Smith's offense. So do we get Arthur Smith's offense or do we get an Aaron Rodgers offense? And is that the reason Russell Wilson isn't here? And I got something about Russell Wilson here in a second, but I got to have a little swig of coffee. Flying solo here. I don't get my same breaks. By the way, Brian had mentioned too, he actually is okay. He's just caught up with various personal stuff. So at the end of the week, we have breaking news, and we gotta roll with this, right? So Rodgers with just 1 game over 300 yards against the Dolphins, and it was an overtime game too, which contributes to it heavily. 339 yards, only 1 touchdown, no interceptions. It's 26-32. Actually, this one was a loss. This one was at the beginning of December, so it was the other Dolphins game within the AFC East. And then after that, he got close. Buffalo, 294. And he had 6 games where he didn't throw for 200 yards. You add on another 3 on top of that, and half of his season, he didn't even throw. Oh, I'm sorry, not even 3, 4. I need to get this graphic up, right? Wow. Really? So over half the season, Aaron Rodgers, not even throwing for 250 yards in a game. This should sound very vaguely familiar to what we were witnessing with Justin Fields, what we were witnessing with Russell Wilson. And with Russell Wilson, if you extrapolate Russell Wilson's statistics last season, so Russell Wilson completed 63.7% of his passes with the Steelers. He appeared in 11 games, 2,482 yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, took 33 sacks. Okay, Mr. Rodgers takes 40 sacks for the New York Jets, but in 17 games. So he plays in 6 more games than Russell Wilson will for the Steelers. So if you want to compare these side by side, when you have a 28-11 touchdown to interception ratio, Wilson over 17 games would have been 25-8. So 3 fewer touchdowns and 3 fewer picks. But Wilson should have been sacked 50 times, which is, honestly, that's the problem with Russell Wilson these days. Justin Fields too, just guys that hold on to the ball way too long. Wilson fumbled the ball 5 times. He lost it 4 times. Aaron Rodgers also fumbled the ball 5 times, but only lost it twice. So you've got a lot of similarities here. Rodgers getting sacked 40 times in a 17-game season. Not actually bad, not terrible, right? And if I'm going to nitpick and pull, statistics for certain games and say, well, he only threw for 300 yards in this game. He did have 5 games where he only took a single sack. Another 4 games where he only took 2. That's half the season of, not negative plays. 3 sacks in another, eyeballing it here, about 6 games. 1 with 4, 1 with 5. Those are pretty, consistent numbers for a franchise quarterback in the NFL. A good franchise quarterback. Sometimes, some teams, Denver Broncos here, got to him 4 times or 5 times in a loss. They lost 10-9 against the Broncos, and that was back in late September. So almost still, all that turmoil, Robert Salah getting fired and everything like that was right around that point in time. So I'm going to give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to Aaron Rodgers here. It's the same. Does he improve what the Steelers have? By experience, he absolutely does. I'm always going to talk about the shiny new toy. I'm always going to talk about how fans, like I said, if fans could get Hines Ward back out there, they would, right? If they could get Troy. Some of them are begging for Ben Roethlisberger, and some fans were begging for Ben Roethlisberger to be done back in 2017, but are okay with Aaron Rodgers playing this season. So you got to pick a lane here because that's inconsistent. I guess both things could be true, but Ben didn't pop his elbow yet. That doesn't happen until 2019, a year in which Mason Rudolph ends up becoming the starting quarterback for the Steelers. Most of his reps are in training camp because Ben doesn't take him as a veteran. And the Steelers also make some decisions as to whether or not they keep Duck Hodges. The workload and share that they have with Josh Dobbs at the time, who gets traded. If you remember, Hodges ends up coming back to the team and almost right before Ben pops his elbow. Rudolph comes in. He doesn't have a whole lot of prep. He would get maybe a saving grace. He might practice on Wednesdays, and when he's the primary backup quarterback, which he wasn't his rookie season. Now, don't forget what else happens here. Randy Fichtner. Is this Randy's final year as offensive coordinator? Let's see. Todd Haley was 2017, so 18-19. Yeah, second year for Randy Fichtner, but because he's buddies with Big Ben and gets the promotion from quarterbacks coach, they don't replace him as a quarterbacks coach, so Rudolph doesn't have that. So I would have been okay with Rudolph. Obviously, I don't know how many sacks Rudolph's going to take over a 17-game season. I don't know how many turnovers he's going to have. Does he become predictable? Does he just totally wash out? There's some unknowns there versus an Aaron Rodgers. I did argue, though, online that with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, he didn't play right away. During the course of his early career, sat behind Brett Favre for 3 seasons, and his first season as a starter, he had 4,000 yards. They went 6-10, 28 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. So almost the numbers that he has, it's almost like he's come full circle now, right? This isn't Benjamin Button where he's old and then becomes young. It's young and old. And that kind of production, I think, still gets it done for the Steelers. Could Rudolph do something like that? It's a great unknown. I would have had the question, it would have been kind of fun maybe in some ways, and maybe in some ways not, to see. But the Steelers aren't just going to lie down and lose this season. That's why they're making this play for Rodgers. We kind of hinted at, would he actually be there? When would he show up if he does? So now he's going to show up for minicamp. He's going to be a team player. And if he's a full team player, this might benefit Mr. Rudolph up there. I'm going to have to replace his photo now and put Aaron Rodgers in there. Maybe not. I don't know. But me and Aaron are almost the same age. Got the same thing going with our beard here when I'm looking at, you know, some of these images, a little salt and pepper there. I struggle getting out of bed some mornings. I'm not going to lie. Snap, crackle, and pop. Aaron Rodgers got to be feeling that too. And over a 17-game season, I wonder if he ends up making it the whole way. The guy that this actually has like a real pro and con for, though, further down the bench, 6th-round pick, and I know they didn't want Will Howard to be a primary backup at all. When you look at the overall picture, Skylar Thompson, maybe he signs with the practice squad. Probably just there as a camp arm, which is about what you could read the tea leaves and see back when he was signing his future reserves contract back in January. So Thompson will come to camp. I don't think he competes legitimately for a spot on this roster. Rudolph, primary backup. Maybe he learned some things, maybe just by osmosis, even if Aaron Rodgers is like the shittiest teammate in the world, kind of the way Big Ben was in some ways. You get to learn behind both of these guys. You don't know. Rudolph is signed for 2 years, but we're going to be having the same conversation next year with this Aaron Rodgers 1-year deal. So next year, it's like, does Aaron play another year? Was it a good year? Is it bad? Is there a lot of, drama? Is there a lot of smoke around the fire? Like, something happened with Russell Wilson as to why he's not with the Steelers this year. And I made a bunch of guesses through last year, through like all of this offseason where folks were talking about bringing back Justin Fields. And I said, look, I honestly think that the Steelers were looking to kind of give a trial run to see if the Bears screwed up, if their coaching just wasn't like any good, like whatever happened with Fields in Chicago. Let's see if we could develop him. Let's see if we could fix him, put him on a fast track. He got the full training camp. Was Wilson really hurt? Should he have been doing the leg sled thing? Maybe he did, and it was something stupid to put him in hot water. I'm seeing it for both sides. Maybe both things could be true. If he really did get hurt, and that gave the Steelers an opportunity to get a free look at Fields without having to pay or extend him or keep him long term, then that just showed them that maybe this isn't the guy. I always kind of wonder, though, because Wilson did play in the preseason, and all of a sudden he was mysteriously hurt again when you got to the Atlanta Falcons game in week 1. And then everybody's saying, well, the offense was here, the offense was there. Arthur Smith preferred Justin Fields, but yet we didn't see Fields again after, a couple of losses with the Colts and the Cowboys. A game where he wasn't incredibly stellar against was the Raiders, which the Steelers defense did good things and bad things and almost gave up that game. So I don't want to get into the whole Justin Fields thing. We'll see him week 1 and see if what he's going to do in New York, swapping spots with Aaron Rodgers now, which is, the schedule makers knew what was coming. But I wonder, with Russell Wilson, did he fall out of favor right away? And Mike Tomlin was hesitant to name his starting quarterback. They were the last team of the 32 to do so leading into that Falcons game last year. And some of that's gamesmanship, I think, make Atlanta prepare for whoever. But then we didn't see Wilson play against Denver. That's a revenge game, too, for Russell Wilson in week 2 on the road at Sean Payton, another legendary coach that he didn't get along with somehow. I don't know if he's just like an odd duck or what. I was always a Russell Wilson fan during his better years, his Super Bowl run, the escapability, extending plays. Reminded me of like a mini Big Ben. And he comes to Pittsburgh, and I want to be excited about it. But Aaron Rodgers is just somebody that was very difficult for me to get excited about. And he's got a lot of his little off-field shenanigans. He goes on the radio shows. I mean, Ben did these things too, so you're gonna get ready for divvying it up again. And does this make the Steelers more competitive this year? Well, if he let's say Aaron Rodgers ends up playing, I struggle with to think if he could play a full 17-game season. Maybe you do see Mason Rudolph anyways. I don't think you see Will Howard at all. This will hinder Will Howard in one way, because Will Howard's path to getting on the field is nil unless the guys in front of him are hurt. He'll probably be an emergency quarterback at best. He's going to sit there and learn, as a 6th-round pick should. I mean, a first-round pick, I'd probably argue, like a Kenny Pickett, should have sat a little bit longer. I used to say that years ago, back when they drafted him. Like, I don't really want to see him right away, but I didn't really want to see Mitch Trubisky. And after you saw enough of that, you wanted to see Kenny Pickett. You wanted to see anything but Mitch Trubisky, let's put it that way. And when we saw Mason finally come in for that little stretch where they make the playoffs 2 years ago, he showed that he's capable. Can he do it over a 17-game season? Brian, very firmly adamant that he's a backup style quarterback in the NFL. I think if he got, like, you know, a full 8 to 10 games run to see what he really is, I'm talking full practice. I'm not talking about night before playing the Detroit Lions in the rain, in the cold. Ben Roethlisberger's ruled out due to COVID, and luckily Mason practices on Wednesdays because Ben doesn't. And, you know, you at least got somebody that could slide in there, and they played damn well. There was a bunch of fumbles in that game is the reason they lost, and I think that's the reason he always had like a stigma around his name. I just think he just never had an opportunity to build on a foundation. Does he end up getting a shot next year, or are we talking about the Steelers having like 50 draft picks and then just drafting someone when you also have an unknown in Will Howard, who will have a year of experience, at least coming from a very long college season? He gets to sit and learn behind 2 veteran players, one with Rudolph, who's played behind a lot of people, who's had a lot of different experiences, getting knocked out of games with concussions, getting a broken collarbone, playing behind Roethlisberger, going to Tennessee, and, you know, fighting with another young man, Will Levis, who was like pick 50, or no, not even 52. He was like pick 33 or something for the Tennessee Titans a couple years ago. Now he's kind of out of favor there too, but you know, Rudolph's got some experiences that he could share with someone who just won a national championship in college and had a hell of a season, had great coaches, Chip Kelly, everything like that. So all boats rise with the tide. Maybe the Aaron Rodgers signing can help. I'm hoping what it doesn't do is create a circus act, a sideshow. Mike Tomlin is not into this type of stuff, and I don't think they even entertain bringing Aaron Rodgers to the Steel City if this kind of stuff's going to happen. And if it does, like, some of it, you're just going to have to be tongue-in-cheek, but it's definitely somebody that's going to be a leader. They're going to come in there. You don't think that some of these players are going to listen to Aaron Rodgers? Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, even a Pat Freiermuth. DK Metcalf was already working out with them and building a relationship months ago. We saw those videos. So can Aaron Rodgers lead the Steelers to a Super Bowl? Oh boy. Well, the Steelers got to get out of their division first. They don't have the worst quarterback in the division by far, at least now. I think there's a very clear line of separation with Rodgers being added to the Steelers quarterback room, where you could say that they're better than the Cleveland Browns right now. We know who Kenny Pickett is. We don't know about maybe Kenny Pickett with Kevin Stefanski and the Browns offense, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that, you know, overnight Kenny Pickett's going to be better than Kenny Pickett's, you know, baseline is going to be any better than Aaron Rodgers' floor. That doesn't mean Aaron Rodgers' floor or ceiling is going to exceed that of Joe Burrow. It doesn't mean it's going to exceed that of Lamar Jackson, but it does mean that with this Steelers defense, maybe we saw the Bengals implode last year, not make the postseason, even with all the high-priced receivers and all the options they got on that team, all the firepower. Maybe Aaron Rodgers gets the Steelers to an AFC North title. Maybe they have a home playoff game. Maybe they actually win a playoff game. Is that where our bar is set? Hell no. We want a Super Bowl. But somebody made the comment, and I've got the pros and cons show, right? Weighing the pros and cons of Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers. Well, one, I think development of quarterbacks, and how much more can you develop Mason Rudolph? I don't know. He came in the same draft class as Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and you saw what both of those guys just finally did last year, and they had far more experience and opportunities to learn and grow. Don't forget, the Steelers had a first-round grade on Rudolph. I'm not going to say that he's going to go and get his bus put in Canton tomorrow. It's just, it's the unknown. You got to question it. You got to give it a try. And why didn't they keep him last year? I don't know. Because they're just dumb in some cases. They didn't keep any of the guys from last season going into this one. I think we're going to be talking about this same stuff next year, but maybe Rudolph and Howard stick around, and who knows what Rodgers does. But Rodgers, north of 40, He's got to do something that really only Tom Brady's done. You've had some guys compete. Most of the quarterbacks that have competed north of age 40, they're already backups in the league. I know Johnny Unitas, I think, played some games. Doug Flutie. But you've got some guys that did actually compete, start full-time. Drew Brees, Warren Moon. I believe Joe Montana, too. I'm actually going to look up Joe Montana here 1 second just to see, because I think Joe got pretty close with the Kansas City Chiefs. Painful years for Pittsburgh Steelers fans at the tail end there, 93, 94. No, Montana was not, he was only 37, 38. Okay, so Montana's not in that same category, but most recently, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, of course, winning some games. But they win some games, but it's not like it's been a Super Bowl, okay? Tom Brady, let's see. I think he's like the only guy, really. What was this? 2020, 2021. So he's like 43, 44, and 45 years old, his 3 years with Tampa Bay. And it's about it. That's about it. I mean, we know that Drew Brees was still kind of throwing the ball around, but Peyton Manning, okay, Peyton Manning, do we make an exception? Peyton Manning, statistically the worst starting quarterback in NFL history in a Super Bowl. Okay. So he was almost 40. It's generic gauges here. Maybe he turned 40 during the season, has 39 listed here for a Super Bowl year. But we saw what that was like. But Denver put a bunch of players around him. They had a hell of a defense, good coaching. I mean, Peyton Manning, his final year, he didn't even complete 60% of his passes. He missed quite a few games too. 2,249 yards, 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. That's very, very un-Peyton-like. After, torching NFL defenses, basically throwing his arm out, 4,600 yards, 5,400 yards, 47 yards, 37-55, and 39 touchdowns. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is coming in. He's not coming in as young as Peyton Manning was. So making these assumptions that, well, here's a guy that went with the team. Well, yeah, but this is a 1-year deal. Peyton Manning signed for multiple years with Denver. Tom Brady, multiple years with Tampa. They have more of a long-term outlook. I was actually really surprised with Brady, though. I'm just he's kind of almost like year to year. And then he was ready to retire and then played one more, right? I believe, let's see, Brett Favre. I'm trying to see who's won playoff games. I had some of this stuck in my brain. Minnesota, yeah, I think Favre gets to the conference championship in 2009. He's 40 years old. He's 41 the following year, but they went 5-8 and missed the postseason, and then he retired. So he almost had his little revenge tour with Green Bay Packers. And, Aaron Rodgers has a hell of a schedule here, too. They're going to play the Packers this year. The Steelers are. They're going to get to play the Jets. They get to play the entire NFC East, so he gets to see those familiar teams like the Vikings and the Lions and the Bears, who he's absolutely owned in previous seasons. So that'll be kind of fun to watch with him. We'll see. I know someone out there made the comment of what number is Rodgers going to wear. 12 was originally worn and is unofficially retired, not reissued, previously worn by Terry Bradshaw. I think he's actually given the blessing. I know Joe Namath gave the blessing to wear 12 in New York, but Rodgers went back to his college number 8, currently worn by Corliss Waitman with the Steelers. So punter, who might get to change his number, but 8 is such a cursed number, as Tina Rivers here has said many times, our managing editor. You don't want to wear 8 in Pittsburgh and be a quarterback. And she even said the last guy to have any kind of success wearing 8 was Tommy Maddox. And I'm like, well, Tommy, had some middling success. He certainly had a little bit of a career resurgence. I loved Tommy Maddox, don't get me wrong. But some of the same problems as like a Cordell Stewart, the big games, the turnovers sometimes, that's what you remember as those few things. I think that was the stigma with Rudolph. Let's see what the stigma ends up being with Aaron Rodgers. I think my biggest concern is, how does he fit within the rest of the roster? How does he escape pressure? Does he get along with his coaching staff, We showed this picture a million times, may even showed it earlier in the show. Does he cause any other sideline problems, or is he a good teammate? Is he a good Samaritan? Does he realize this might be the last ride? And does he improve everything with the team? He's certainly seen enough defenses. He knows how to read them. He's a 4-time MVP. There's no question that he could game manage. The Steelers just need to do something better than be like, a bottom, like what, 26th or whatever in passing was maybe an improvement last year, 24th, 26th, wherever they ended up at. And you add guys like a DK Metcalf. They're sniffing around at trading for some other players. Jonnu Smith, adding a Gabe Davis. Maybe they go look at an Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper has a lot left in the tank, to be honest. And if you're not asking him to be wide receiver 1 and you put him with Metcalf, Rodgers, we'll see. Rodgers had all his buddies, so there's enough skepticism here with the pros and cons. I just think the major con here, the pro is, does this make the Steelers more competitive in 2025? Yeah, absolutely. I can't kid myself. As much as I have a bias or a slant against Rodgers, I gotta tip my cap and give the respect to, that unknown. Maybe the guy still, he's completely dog crap out there, right? But the con is, we're gonna be right back at this spot on the ride next year talking about the same thing until you find somebody who can play 20 years or so like it, Aaron Rodgers. Folks, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for supporting Steel City Underground wherever you may be watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, Spotify next day. We have 2 feeds out there, so if you like audio, go find the audio. I think it lets you flip on the video one too, but we've got 2. Go subscribe to them. Leave a rating and review wherever you're watching or listening from. We truly do appreciate it. Brian will be back on the horn here maybe next week. May have a surprise guest coming here in the near future as well. So thanks for joining us. We actually had some breaking news, some things to talk about in June, which is always great. I'll get some more opinions from the rest of the dudes here and dudettes from Steel City Underground, and we'll be back with you next week, probably talking about Aaron Rodgers some more. So we'll see. Everyone's going to be excited. Look at this. Aaron Rodgers throwing a DK Metcalf. Well, they're out there in shorts, at the south side. So fun to watch, but I can't wait until they get into pads. Training camp will truly be exciting as well. So until next time, folks, my name's Joe Kuzma, and as we always close out the show, I almost forgot the sign off here. Well, my name is Joe. We always encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.